Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Carney, thank you for appearing. Instead of increasing affordable emissions-free hydroelectricity, the former Ontario Liberal government decided to lock in 20-year price subsidies to multinational power companies for less reliable wind and solar power. Ontario's financial accountability officer said last week the prices paid to electricity generators under the green energy contracts are significantly higher than the average price of electricity in Ontario. These high contracted prices are one of the factors that contributed to the price of electricity in Ontario doubling between 2009 and 2019. Is your company or any of its subsidiaries receiving payment under any of these contracts?
First off, thank you for the question, Mr. Poilievre. I do not have knowledge of that. I can write back to the committee on it, but I honestly, I don't know the answer.
All right. Well, you are the vice president responsible for environmental, social, and governance, and this is supposedly...
To be specific, Mr. Poilievre, my responsibilities are for developing an impact strategy, which is a new strategy at Brookfield. I'm not responsible for previous activities, although Brookfield has much to recommend as a great Canadian company that has built renewable power.
Thank you for that. Well, the Financial Post says that Brookfield Renewable Energy, Enbridge, and TransAlta alone account for 38% of these subsidies. These subsidies are massive. They amount to 150% subsidy for wind, 750% for solar. That drives up the cost of energy for everyday people. According to the Ontario Association of Food Banks, in a report on the subject, has created something called energy poverty. One victim of this social injustice was Sherry Selena, a disabled single mother from Perth who's suffering with depression, anxiety, PTSD, type 2 diabetes, and chronic pain from a car accident. Her bill rose to $309 a month despite conserving electricity. I want to quote her. "My house is heated by wood and propane. My son requires a BPAP machine for his severe obstructive sleep apnea syndrome," end quote. Mr. Carney, she was terrified that the Liberal government was going to disconnect her power because she couldn't pay the bills that rose to subsidize the profits of multinational corporations like yours. I guess the question is very simple. Because you are in charge of impact investing, would you commit on behalf of Brookfield that your company will no longer accept these unjust subsidies that are driving people in Ontario into poverty and desperation?
Well, first thing, Mr. Poilievre, is the energy policy of Ontario is the responsibility of the government of Ontario. It has been put in place. And part of that energy policy, as you know, has been to diversify energy sources. And I'd associate myself with the comments of Mr. Bradley moments ago about the important role that electricity and the broad range of electricity sources are going to play in Ontario and Canada's transition to a more sustainable and inclusive economy.
But my question was, would you commit today to reject those subsidies? You can do so. Your company can. Your company can reject the subsidies and offer to charge the market rate, which is 6 cents, instead of the subsidized rate, which is about 15 cents per kilowatt hour. You could do that if you were not just interested in profits for your shareholders, but if you were interested in solidarity with people like Miss Salinas. So yes or no, would you commit today to doing that?
Mr. Poilievre, the power supply in Ontario is subject to rules that are set. One of the most important things, and I'll go back to my earlier comments to the committee, which is in order to build a competitive economy, an inclusive economy, a sustainable economy, and that on a foundation of sustainable power, it is critical that we have certainty and predictability. And so part of what happens with the evolution, and we are talking...
But you're not answering my question. You're not answering my question. My question was whether you would put aside your the interests of your profits and your shareholders to put poor people who are going to the food bank because they can't pay their power bills, and they're using that money to subsidize your company. if you really believe in solidarity and not just profiting your shareholders, you could voluntarily reduce what you're charging to the government and the people of Ontario and save people from the necessity of going to the food bank to keep the lights on. So yes or no, will you do that?
Mr. Poilievre, before you stopped my answer, you're giving one characterization of the power policy of the government of Ontario, and there is a new government of Ontario, I would add, that also has ability to change a broad range
of policies. It's a locked-in contract for 20 years.
It is a locked-in contract.
Yeah, there you go. So you knew that much. You knew that much.
And a relevant point. No, I'm just waiting for you to acknowledge it. I appreciate your acknowledging it. What's also relevant, and it's exceptionally important for Ms. Salinas and people in her situation, and one of the tragedies we have in Ontario and in Canada is people living in poverty. Now, the instrument of solidarity to address poverty, broader poverty, is not targeted energy policy, but it is a broader range of support policies.
Well, the solution is for you to stop ripping people off by overcharging them for electricity.
Mr. Poilievre, that is your time, and may I gently remind you not to talk over each other so that the interpreters can do their work. Thank you. We will now go to the next MP. It is MP Johari. You have the floor for 6 minutes.